Hi, I'm Anthony from the Writers Resource Centre. Recently we interviewed LJ Charleston, who's the author of the new book, Light, Sweet, Crude, which I've got to say is a great read. Now LJ's story is an important one for any author to know about because LJ took a bunch of knockbacks before she finally succeeded in getting her book published. So listen up, LJ's got some great advice for you.
Well, I actually wanted to be a journalist when I was really young, and I became the youngest ever newspaper columnist for the West Australian newspapers back when I was 18. And even back then I received hate mail and fan mail, which was a great life lesson for me. So I've always wanted to be a writer, and I did creative stuff when I was quite young, but it was mostly poetry. And of course my poetry back then was pretty appalling. But I felt like I was a writer already as a teenager because I had a fortnightly column called Distractions, and I wrote one week and then a male writer would write the following week, and we could write about whatever we wanted. We had absolute editorial control, and years later people would still say to me, that article you wrote about girls losing their virginity on Rottnest Island was stuck on our family fridge for months, you know, that sort of thing. So I already felt like I was a writer. The downside of that though is I went to university at Curtin University in WA and did a Bachelor of Arts in Journalism and Literature, but I was already working as a newspaper columnist, and most of the tutors at the time were people who'd lost their job at newspapers, and I found some of them were horrible to me, absolutely horrible, or would hold up one of my columns as an example of bad writing or something like that. So I felt like I was already a working journalist while I was at university. But my creative stuff, I slammed out my first novel when I was probably about 20, and it was called Sybil and Her Feet, and it was about a woman who has fallen pregnant and doesn't know which boyfriend because she had 3 men in her life. And of course, reading back now, it's pretty bad, but I still think I had the bones for quite an innovative story, and I entered it into the Vogel, and I think my manuscript was returned to me. So I started writing my first novel when I was about 20, and I kept entering the Vogel Award, and just was rejected. Most of the time they don't even send a rejection slip, they just send your manuscript back to you. But it wasn't until I was actually, I think I was about 30, and I did my Master of Arts degree at UTS. In the first draft of my novel, which became Light, Sweet, Crude, was read out in class, just the first chapter, and I remember Brenda Walker put down her pen and she said, "This is publishable now, you need to get hold of publishers," and that sort of thing. And that's when I thought, oh, maybe I am onto a good thing. But it was a long, long journey and several drafts and rewrites. And I had 3 children in between. I had 3 kids under 3, but I kept on writing and never gave up because I really believed in my book. And then eventually, when I was 39, which is a year and a half ago, I got my publishing deal, and that was an absolute thrill. But I've had a lot of rejection along the way, and I think I'm a good example of never. I've been on the roller coaster ride from being snapped up by a top New York literary agent who was talking 6-figure sums and you're a great new writer and telling me on the bee's knees, and they were all very excited. But once I had 5 rejections from top publishing houses who all said the same thing. They all rejected my novel for the same reason. They said they loved it, they thought it was really different, but that my lead character was too nasty and I had to water him down. But before I got a chance to water him down, my agent dumped me. I literally got a Dear John letter saying she was going to release me from my contract so that I'm free to find another agent, and I was quite mortified, but the good thing about having as many rejections as I've had over the years is it was like water off a duck's back, really. So then I thought, well, okay, I will try the UK, and I got picked up by an agent there, and same sort of thing happened. I kept getting rejected by the main publishing houses saying my lead character's too nasty. I was lucky that my book's got a very original premise, that a man has accidentally killed a young woman and gets away with it, but ends up having to defend the man accused of the crime he committed. So immediately people start thinking of movie as well, and I have written a screenplay for it as well. I went the rock and roll route and contacted quite a lot of independent publishers, and then struck gold with Arctic Wolf, which specialises in quirky crime fiction, and they loved my book as it is. I didn't have to water down my lead character too drastically, and yeah, just went on from there. So it's been a long process from writing my first novel at 20 to finally being published at 39, but I've lived quite a big life in that time, and I've totally had to rewrite and restructure my book. For example, my book is told from the point of view of 3 characters. So initially I had it in 3 big chunks, character 1, character 2, character 3. But my New York agent who dumped me, she, in her favour, she's a fantastic reader. She's not a writer herself, but she's a Harvard graduate and an amazing reader she was quite a young woman. And she said right away, this doesn't work, you have to chop it up into little bite-sized chapters and weave the story that way. And it was another probably 18 months of rewriting where I'd have paper physically laid out on the floor because I had to tell myself, oh, that person's not supposed to know that, and that person knows that but doesn't know that that person knows this. So I've got quite a complicated plot that I've had to weave through the story. So yes, it's been a long journey, but a relief to be published before I turn 40. There's a lot of desperate writers out there a lot of people resort to self-publishing, which is absolutely fine, and I can understand why they do it, but I was determined to get a publisher behind me. So yeah, once again, persistence. And if you believe in yourself, you will persist. If I had given up 3 years ago when my New York agent dumped me, my book would not be published. It would still be sitting in my drawer, literally. Okay, one of my favourite books that's made a big impact on my life, and a lot of men are very surprised when I mention it. It's Charles Bukowski's Women. I love it. I love his style. I see it sort of similar to mine, where it's very fast, and he mentions a lot of pop culture. It's first person. It's pretty dirty. I just love it. It's so raw. And funny story, when I went to LA back in, when was I there? In 95, I was sort of backpacking, and my big dream was to meet Charles Bukowski. And of course, I didn't even know he was dead. I think he died in 1984. But one thing he was famous for, because he's a poet as well as an author, is that he was a rather fat, pretty much drunken guy, and would often turn up drunk to his poetry readings, but women would throw themselves at his feet, and that's partly what his book is about, being a drunk poet and having so many women in his life. Not that I wanted to be one of those women, of course, but I had this dream of going to LA and tracking him down, or going to a reading or meeting him, and of course, what an idiot am I? Yeah, he was dead. So I told some of my LA writer friends, they said, he died in the 80s. Had no idea. So anyway, there was no Google back then, so what did I know? But he's great. So that best advice I can give is work hard, treat it like a job, write about subjects that mean a lot to you, or things that fascinate you. I got the idea from my book. When I was a TV reporter for Today Tonight, I had to interview a lawyer, and I can't remember what the interview was about, but off camera I asked him why he left his last firm, and he said to me, well, if I didn't, 3 of us would have killed each other. And he was joking, but I felt he was being serious, and his story stayed with me for quite a while. And then I read Stephen King's book called On Writing, and he really subscribes to the what-if theory. And I started thinking, well, what if you were a lawyer and you killed someone and got away with it? And then what if someone else was arrested for your crime, and what if you had to represent him? What happens then? So that's how I sort of thought of it. So I think for any author, try and take inspiration from things that fascinate you. For example, I'm fascinated by, my husband's best friend is a fireman, and I'm fascinated by the subject of arsonists and how a lot of arsonists are actually firemen. So I'm developing a screenplay with a friend of mine at the moment about a fireman who starts fires, and it's going to be a black comedy, but it's something that no one's really touched before. So think about things that fascinate you, write about them. Think about a book that you've loved, or something that you admire and what you admire about it. But mostly just treat it as a job. It's hard work, and if you really, really want to be a writer, also be realistic. Not everyone becomes a bestseller, and when you go into Borders, you're looking at what is the 1 or 2% of authors who actually made it at that far to the bookstore. So it's almost like wanting to be an actress. You're not always going to be, Nicole Kidman in the movies, but you can be an actor treading the boards in amateur theatre, or doing your own short films. There are ways that you can take control of your dreams as a writer.
That's really cool.